Did we check on
Which one's on? PC2 3D? 3D. Yeah, perfect. Which one is the one that's normal?
Test, test, test.
Hi, how you doing? You're Jeannie, right? You're Brian Summersmall? No, that must be the other. You're not Brian's mom? No. Oh, okay.
I'm nobody's mom. Well, I am, but nobody does that. Nobody wants to do it.
Maybe that must be the other one. That's, must be your niece's room. Yep. Okay, once it's working, go over and pause the meeting.
Wel even zo.
Good afternoon. It's nice to welcome you to our beautiful February 10th afternoon meeting of the Board of Supervisors. If you would please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. Our first item of business today will be a presentation of a proclamation honoring Dinuba Sentinel, and we will turn the time over to Supervisor Worthley for that pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week at the Chamber of Commerce banquet in Dinuba, they have a habit of not making known in advance who the winners of their awards are. And so it was a surprise, I think, to one honoree, and that was the Dinuba Sentinel for being named the Large Employer of the Year in Dinuba. The Sentinel is celebrating a centennial as of tomorrow. It will be 100 years of operation, founded February 11th of 1909. And I'd like to read we have a proclamation here honoring the Sentinel. There's a quote from J.R. Locke, who was not the original owner of the paper, but pretty darn close. In 1914, he said, "To print the news, to be clean and fair, and stand for what seems right for the people and best interest of the district is the aim of this paper." Sentinel has gone up and down, had days when years when it was a daily paper. For the last number of years, all of my life that I can recall, it's been twice a week, or what used to be twice a week, now once a week. And we're happy to honor Bob and Diana Razan today. The indication here, Bob, is that you have operated the Sentinel for more than 25 years. I dare say that I think you've been there for about half of the 100 years or close to it. So it's a real privilege for me to present this proclamation. And Bob, if you would join me in the well, I'd like to give this to you. Thanks for coming down. Hope you take a lot of good notes today. And this is a proclamation honoring the Sentinel on its 10th anniversary. We'd be glad to hear a few words if you'd like to say something to us.
Well, the only thing I can really say is that I'm just the right person at the right place at the right time. People, I mean, it's been in my wife's family all these years. They've worked very hard to serve the community and everything, and it's been my privilege to carry on, I and Diane, and the privilege to carry on with them. We owe everything to them, to our community, the support of the community, and well, I'd like to say I'll be here 100 years from now for another one, but I hope it's that one.
You're very well.
Thank you. I'm looking for Sheriff Bill Whitman. Is the sheriff here?
Yes.
There he is. I'd like to give Sheriff Whitman a few moments of time.
Thank you. I come here today with a heavy heart and to inform you that, as you all well know, that Sergeant Greg Hernandez was involved in a traffic accident on January the 29th and passed away last Friday, February the 6th. Services will be at the St. Mary's Catholic Church in Visay, and the address is, and it'll be February the 13th, 2009 at 1 p.m. The address is 608 North Church Street. Graveside service will follow at Exeter, and those of you that you may want to view the body will be on Thursday, Saucer and Dillard, and Rosary will be Thursday at 6:30. So I want to thank you for flying the flags at half-staff, and we're in the process of putting everything together now, as you know. So I'm sure you'll all be there, and I'll see you there. Thank you.
Sheriff, thank you. We know this is a difficult time for you and the Sheriff's Department, and you know, we look, you know, unfortunately things like this do happen, and we'll definitely be there on Friday. I'd like to make a little announcement that parking in that area is very tight. So if you're going to go, you want to go early, because there aren't a lot of parking lots there. You need to park on the street.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Our next item is public comments. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. Under state law, matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the board at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public is invited to make comments at that time the item comes up for board consideration. Any person addressing the board will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes so that all interested parties may have an opportunity to speak, with a total of 15 minutes allotted for the public comment period times. At all times, please use a microphone and state your name and address for the record. Also, if you're here to speak to item number 29, the board supervisor salaries, please wait until item 29 is heard, and that will be heard in just a little bit later this afternoon. So the time is opened up for public comments. If you would like to address the board, an item not appearing on the agenda, please step forward and state your name and address. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Matthew Nelson. I live in Dinuba. It was November last year. I had my property annexed from a larger lot, and I went in February last year to obtain a APN number so I could get my loan, and I was kind of shoved to the side by the county recorder's office. I was first told to maybe try another lender. I was then told that maybe if I was at Syntex, Magano, Ennis Homes, I might be helped. I talked to Mr. Hardcastle, and he said that he worked for you, and that short of being contacted by you, he couldn't help me at this time.
I do have a question. Have you talked with Jeff Forbes in our office?
No.
I would recommend you call Jeff Forbes. He's become an expert at helping folks through these matters, and he works with our office. So, Jeff, raise your hand. The young man in the red shirt right there, contact him, and he'll help you as best we can.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Seeing none, we will move to item number 3, Board of Supervisors matters. Supervisor Ennis.
Yes, we had what I thought was a very good trip to Washington, D.C. last week. We met with all of our elected officials. And of course, the thing that was on my radar was Lake Success and Success Dam. And everybody seems to be on the same page with us. We also met with representatives from the Corps of Engineers. And now that we do have a plan and it's going forward, hopefully we'll be able to stay on schedule. And next step would be getting our property that's around the lake acquisition so that these people can go on with their lives. So that's looking better. Also went up to Springville on Saturday night. They had their big Chamber of Commerce award ceremony, and the focal point was the Springville Park, which has been completed now, and there were probably 9 people. They were given awards, whether they offered help or whether they volunteered or whatever they did for the community, but that is the focal point of that community, and it was a very, very good chamber meeting to go to. There was a lot of people there that got awards, and I was just glad to be there to hand out some proclamations from the county and help out. And that's all. Thank you.
If I can ask you a question, 2 years ago we made that same trip about the Success Dam, and a couple of years ago we were on target for construction in the next 3 or 4 years. Are we still looking at that same type?
2011 is when it's projected. The major thing, though, we wanted to get done first was get the property acquisition so those people can go on with their lives. So, and hopefully get the pool raised at the same time and increase the capacity by 25,000 acre feet.
Great, thank you. Supervisor Sheeta.
The Board of Supervisors went along with the Tulare County Association of Governments on this trip to Washington, D.C., and I want to go over some of the things that we lobbied for. As the Association of Tulare County Governments and the Board of Supervisors on transportation matters, Highway 99 is our #1 priority in our county, making it a 3-lane highway. The other issue we talked about was by issue number 2 is the rail service that we currently have on the east side of Tulare County. And we met with all the electeds, we met with transportation staff and our attorney, and we got really great reception from the people in Washington, D.C., because this project isn't just about Tulare County. It's about connecting Kern County, Tulare County, and Fresno County, giving a option to provide intermodal service, which means that people on the east side of this valley can get 3 railroad cars, 2 cars, 5 cars, but now the mainline railroad companies, if you don't have 100 cars at one time, they're not going to service you. The other thing that they were impressed with is that we are very close to forming a joint JPA, Joint Powers Agreement, with Fresno and Kern County to see this project through. This project is the first leg we're working on, and the second leg would be going from Fresno to the Port of Oakland. It would take approximately 40 diesel trucks a day off the road that goes through our valley, and that would make a tremendous impact on our air quality. So they're not only interested in Washington about keeping the service up for business, it's also for increasing our abilities to reach our air quality attainment levels. We're continuing to work with the other two counties, and we're seeing some progress, and we will hopefully see something by the end of the year. The other reason we were there was that we're looking at the stimulus bill. Everybody's talking about the stimulus bill. But what a lot of people don't realize, the staff of our electeds in Washington, D.C. are also working on a new reauthorization of the transportation bill. So they expect to put that in full gear as soon as the stimulus bill is passed. So we were there to lobby for transportation issues in our county. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Supervisor Worthley.
While we were back in Washington, we did have the opportunity to meet with Senator Feinstein and Senator Boxer's senior staff, and it was an opportunity to meet with an elected official that we would normally not see in Tulare County. She had some very specific questions for our delegation relative to the housing crisis here in Visalia, what it meant in terms of numbers of houses, how things are being done to try to deal with that. So it was a very good meeting with her, and I think overall we had a very successful trip to Washington, but of course it always remains to be seen as we wait for allocations of funds to be distributed and that sort of thing. I wanted to say that 2 weeks ago I was in Southern California on behalf of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District Governing Board to meet with some South Coast officials there. We have agreed to have a more formalized process where we will be working together to try to find win-win situations on air quality projects. One, of course, good example would be to focus on those trucks, the diesel trucks, which are using the ports in Southern California and then travel through the San Joaquin Valley en route to destinations either further north or to the east. That would be a simple kind of thing to focus on, but there are other opportunities, I think, to look at projects which could be beneficial for both the air districts. And since we share the unfortunate situation of having some of the poorest air quality in the continental United States, we have a similar interest there. Also, I was in Sacramento that week for the Commission on State Mandates, which I serve at behalf of the governor. And part of the Commission's responsibilities are to deal with counties who seek to get relief from the state of California obligations because of their financial woes. The last time a claim was filed under these provisions was 2005 Butte County. But they have had inquiries from 3 counties thus far, and of course many other counties are considering this option, which is a very time-consuming process. But just to let my fellow supervisors know that Tulare County is not alone, obviously, in this financial crises which all counties are facing at this time. So that's all I have to report.
Supervisor Cox, I forgot something.
Sure.
The week before we went to Washington, I was in Sacramento with the Valley One Voice COG, which is all 8 transportation organizations from Bakersfield to San Joaquin. And the same priorities are for the 8 counties are Highway 99, finishing 99, and the second priority is rail for all 8 counties. So I wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Supervisor Vanderpool.
I too went along on the Washington, D.C. trip. It was already fairly well covered. I just thought it was an excellent opportunity to get in front of our representatives back there. And one message that we were able to send because of the coalition and the group that was there was a very powerful delegation from Tulare County. We had elected officials from the county level, from the city levels, and that received a lot of attention from the elected officials and really opened the door and enabled us to meet with electeds all the way up to Dianne Feinstein. They were very impressed by the number of representatives that we had there. So I thought it was overall a very effective trip on issues ranging from the stimulus package to Success Dam as mentioned. So that was really an excellent use of our time, and I think that we're going to be seeing the fruits of our labor when the stimulus bill does come through. And then also wanted to mention on a sad note, I'm sure most of you have heard that in Tulare, the Chamber of Commerce CEO did pass away a couple of weeks ago. I attended our services in Salinas this weekend. and there's going to be a local service, so to speak. Our family's going to be traveling into Tulare to, I guess, remember Jennifer McCown, the CEO, on February 21st. That's a Saturday, so if anyone's interested, more details can be obtained from the Tulare Chamber of Commerce. But again, we were very sad at that loss, and we really lost a very valuable member of our community and also of Tulare County. So our thoughts and prayers go out to her family, friends, and community. So
The only thing I have to talk about is 2 weeks ago I was in Sacramento attending the executive committee of the CSAC organization, and there was a lively discussion about going to Sacramento as regions, and our region, like Supervisor Shida mentioned, is Bakersfield to San Joaquin. So we are planning a regional trip with all 8 counties between Bakersfield and San Joaquin to go to Sacramento and let them know how their lack of coming to a conclusion on the budget is affecting our county, and how some of the things that are included to be, some of the services included in the budget to be reduced, how they will affect the folks in our county. So that meeting is being scheduled for the next 2 weeks, and we will be traveling to meet with as many of the elected as we can get together, both Assembly and Senate members that represent the 8 counties, to voice our opinion on the state budget, or the lack of a state budget. Okay, this time we will take our consent calendar up. We will pull items 24, 25, and 26 for separate consideration. Supervisor Worthley will recuse himself from item 24, and we will now address the remainder of the consent calendar. Entertain a motion.
motion to approve.
Motion by Supervisor Vanderpool, second by Supervisor Shida. Please cast your votes. Unanimous. Item 24 is,
Mr. Chairman, I will recuse myself on this item because one of the property owners owns property adjacent to my residence, so therefore I will not be participating in this.
okay, so entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Moved by Ennis,
Second.
second by Shida. Cast your votes. Is 3-1, Cox voting no. Next is item number 25. Entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
We can actually take
Second.
number 25 and 26 together.
Right.
So items 25 and 26. Motion by Supervisor Ennis,
I'll second.
second by Vanderpool. Cast your votes. It's 4-1, Cox voting no. At this time, we will move to our untimed items, and we will take up item number 30 to begin with, which is I understand will be our shortest presentation. Mr. Fussell.
That's what I just heard. Mr. Cox. Brett Fussell, Assistant Director with the Resource Management Agency. The item before you this afternoon is a study session regarding the Seville Water Company, and staff is seeking direction from the Board of Supervisors on how to approach this matter. Staff received a letter from Self-Help Enterprises, requesting that the county consider temporary ownership of the Seville Water Company through a receivership process. And I do want to let the board know that Paul Boyer with Self-Help is in the chambers today, as well as Laurel Firestone from the Community Water Center. To keep it brief, the Seville Water Company is in a severe state of disrepair. The system's very old, small-sized pipes. It leaks. It has a single well with no redundancy for backup for water. The water is being tested high in nitrates. Nobody appears to be managing the system. And there has been an application for state revolving fund money that would replace the system, as well as a second request for money to drill a new well. However, in speaking with the State Department of Public Health regarding this area, they indicate that before they could release that funding, they want to make sure that there's somebody in place to take over and manage that system. In addition, there has been a group formed of community members out there They've been meeting regularly, and they have expressed an interest to take over ownership and responsibility for the system, either through the form of a mutual water company or through the form of a public utility district. I believe the preference is probably going to be a mutual water company, because then property owners are involved, versus a public utility district, which is registered voters. So recognizing that the board has a long-standing policy dealing with these small these small systems, we have several sewer systems and water systems that the county is responsible for, and every year I come before you with rate hearings to raise the rates, and they're even to a level yet where they're not fully supporting those systems, requiring a loan from the revolving loan fund, and these are in the county's zones of benefits. So again, today staff is looking for direction. If you have an interest, before making a final decision, staff would suggest that you do have an opportunity to meet with your legal counsel, because through the receivership process is a legal process. And so that's sort of summarizing my presentation, and with that I would...
And do we have that set for closed session?
We do not, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't asked to agendize it. We can certainly set it for the 24th, in addition to the issues regarding the legal process of establishing a receivership. I concur with Mr. Fussel's recommendation. I would like to address the liabilities and risks that could accrue to the county if it were to step into that position.
Mr. Chair, question. Britt, when you come back, I noticed when I was reading the detail of this agenda item, there was a sentence in there. It said, "Operation and maintenance of the Seville Water Company, even temporarily, might impact the general fund." Could you, and you might not be prepared to do that today, but when that item does come back before us, would you be able to give us a little bit of a detail, or maybe an estimation at what sort of impact that would have?
The point I was trying to make on that was that the other zones of benefit for water and sewer systems, as I just stated earlier, are not, through the rate structure, are not fully funding themselves. As a result, in order to pay all of the bills associated with it, operating those, there is a contribution from the revolving loan fund associated with those zones of benefits. That revolving loan fund source of money is from the general fund. The part of the direction is staff has not undertaken a really full-blown due diligence to determine what the precise cost would be to operate those systems, because if the board's direction is, no, we don't want to be involved, let it go into private receivership, then we don't want to have spent that effort. If there is an interest in pursuing this, then we would do the due diligence to determine, okay, what would it cost to bring in an operator to operate the system, and how much is the county's cost associated with oversight and management of that, what would the rate structure be, et cetera.
Mr. Chairman, there are some folks that are lined up here, I think, that would like
Yes.
to address us on this matter before we leave it. I would simply like to say, as sort of a overall bird's eye view of the situation, I think that notwithstanding the fact we haven't had a chance to visit with our counsel on this matter, I think there is going to be a hesitance on the part of the board to want to accept the responsibility that has a liability attached to it, which seems to know perhaps no limits in terms of longevity, if nothing else. And I know that the community is interested in basically a temporary situation. That is, the idea that if the county were to step in, it would be for a temporary period of time, at which time it would be then taken over by another organization, and you mentioned whether it might be a mutual water company or something akin to that. And I think I say this because as the people coming forward, I think what the board would probably want to know is what are the assurances that if the board were to step in temporarily, that this in fact would happen, and what would be the timelines of it happening, because I think it might affect the decision by the board ultimately whether or not they want to go down this road.
Mr. Chairman, I might add to Supervisor Worthley, I personally would be interested if anyone has been in touch with the Public Utilities Commission, because at one point in time they had a moratorium on formation of mutual water companies. And
I can't answer that question. I have not, but since you've raised the question, we'll do that research. Understood, Supervisor Wordley, and that is one of the issues that staff's very concerned about, is not only having a very short horizon whereby the county would step in and then exit, turning it over to another entity, also having a strategy whereby if something should happen through this process that is not working, the county is able to step out as well.
Also, you mentioned the revolving loan fund. How much of that has been paid back since that was created? That's a
Is it a rhetorical question,
I
Supervisor
know the
Cox?
answer to.
The answer would be none. The best of my knowledge, ever since I've been involved with these for the last 4 years, we've always made requests from the revolving loan fund and have not had the money to make a payment back to the revolving loan fund.
And I know it goes back much further than the 4 years. We do have some folks here that would like to speak to this matter, so we'll allow those that are here to speak to the Seville Water Company issue. If you'd like to step forward, and please state your name and address for the record. And thank you for lining up. Appreciate that.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Quintana. I'm a citizen from the Stone Corral School District, as well a board member from our district as well. First of all, I want to thank you guys for heading to Washington, D.C., and hopefully, like you said, we're going to see the fruits of your trip. But I just wanted to give you a little history of our town of Seville. If you guys are aware, our pipes are over 100 years old. I live in the community. I take a shower every day with dirt coming down my shower. Our pipes are being leaked, have leaks all over the place. We have our ditch water that's coming down from the farmers that run in the center of our town. When our water pressure goes down, all the chemicals, all the farm water seeps into our pipes. But what we're asking is that you guys would take temporarily receivership for us so that we can organize ourselves and get our own water system going. But I'm just one person here, but like I said, I want to just ask you guys to support us in doing the human thing that's right for the human beings, for the elderlies, the children of our town, that we do have at least clean water to take a shower. Another thing, our school district is not allowed to drink the water, so our children in our school cannot drink from the water fountains. We have to buy our water for our children to buy. And, you know, this is unheard of here in the United States, that we don't have drinking water in our schools. So I'm asking that if you guys can support us in any way to get us going and taking temporarily receivership. And also, I wanted to share with Steve, my mom collects a lot of history, but there was an article of when your district, in 1989, you guys were struggling with contaminated water. But, you know, it's just not our town. I'm sure it's other cities, but we're asking for your help to help our little town of, you know, 400 people. Evidently, we couldn't get a lot of people here. Most of our people are farm labor workers, and of course, it was a beautiful day to go pick oranges. They would have loved to have been here, but I guess some of them couldn't show up. But I want to thank you for your time and your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Paul Boyer from Self-Help Enterprises, and Mrs. Quintana that just spoke, she's president of the school district there in Stone Corral, and we worked with the school district to apply for funds to replace those pipelines that she was talking about. That application went in a year ago, last January. The state basically has put things on hold, as you know, all around the state. Seville's a little more on hold because they're not sure who the real owner of the water system is, but they were willing to take that application and at least down by the placeholder. We're also working with the school district to do an application that's due the 27th of this month to replace their water well or find another source of water because of the high nitrates there. The system, as was said earlier, you know, it has these problems. The community has had a private owner over a series of years. There's Mr. Benzenberg for many years. Then Joe Lane took it over. You know, he was killed in an accident. It's very uncertain who really is going to own it. We don't know when probate's ever going to be resolved. And state health is concerned about the fact that water tests have not all been done. And I believe county health has been doing the bacterial tests. We went out and took some nitrate tests earlier. Other chemical tests have not been done. State health is concerned that with this one well system, that if it is to fail, there's really, it would be a real emergency because Mr. Frias, who stepped up to take care of things in what he thought was, I shouldn't say this temporary, but it's ended up being a while longer than he thought it was going to be. He just can't keep taking care of it. And State Health has basically said they need to have somebody in a receivership position if there's an emergency out there that they could provide emergency funds to solve an emergency if it does occur, which could happen at any time. And so we're asking that the county consider being the receiver. The people in the community, they are actively working towards coming up with an ownership format that they think would work. Many of the people were here at a meeting last Friday night in the community to talk about whether community service district, mutual water company, whatever might make sense. But they are wanting to move ahead. They are moving ahead. And we just hope that you would consider doing this, again, on a temporary basis. And we would commit to working with them. I know Community Water Center is here too, to help them get through that process as soon as possible and go through the process with the state to be considered a water supplier and meet all the requirements. There's one other item too that came up recently that I just wanted to share with you if you might be able to help with. The water well site itself, which is Assessor's Parcel 050-163-004, is up for sale for taxes, we just found. And I believe it's this next month that is up for sale. It's shown as being owned by BH Trust, which I believe is Mr. Bodie in Carmichael. We don't know if he's still alive. But if there's some way the county could help so that this property could be, again, kept so that when a new ownership takes place, even though it's a high nitrate well, it's the only water supply they have now, and they're going to need to have that, and it probably is a backup. And again, we just ask if you could help them. Again, we're estimating it might be about a year to get through this whole process.
Well, I have a question. You mentioned a grant you've applied for, and this is to replace the underground lines?
There's two, and it's a grant, possibly loan combination. We don't know until they review the application, yes.
And how much is that for?
Over $1 million. I can't remember the exact amount. I think it's something like $1.4 million to replace basically all the pipelines except for there's a transite pipe that goes from the well to the school now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Britton Schwartz. I'm from the Community Water Center. I wanted to thank the board for taking the time to consider this issue today. We've been with the Community Water Center and its self-help have been working with the community of Seville since this fall to help them resolve some of the issues that their water system has. And as you've heard, I think it's a bit of a tangle at the moment. And I think what really needs to happen is the community needs a temporary receiver so that this receivership process can help them resolve some of those tangles so that they can take the system back and run it themselves. I think that something that's important for the board to know is that when we first started working with the community and organizing the Committee for a Better Seville, people voted on what they would prefer to see happen, and once they became aware of the need for a receiver, a temporary receiver, it was pretty unanimous that the community felt most comfortable having the county come in to fill that role because as you probably know, there's already a zone of benefit for Seville that covers its sewer services. And people in the community not only feel like they trust the county and they're familiar with the county, but also that the county wouldn't try to keep their water system. They're worried about having a private company come in as the receiver because they're afraid the private company is going to try and keep it. So I think that both the county and the community have the same goal here, which is that the system stay in receivership and stay, if the county decides to serve as the receiver, in the receiver's hands for as little time as possible. And toward that end, the Committee for a Better Seville will be meeting next Friday. We meet once every couple of weeks. And you are all invited, if any of you would like to come, especially you, Mr. Worthley, since it's your region. And we will be discussing the different options that the community has to create an ownership structure like a mutual or community services district that would be able to form and take the system out of receivership. And Supervisor Ishida made the great suggestion that we invite Mr. George Finney, the Executive Director of LAFCO, to come to that meeting and discuss with the community the different kind of pros and cons of those options, and so we'll be doing that. And I just want to assure you that the community is very serious about moving forward and creating whatever ownership structure makes the most sense for this community to take their water system back. People are very committed to this community. They've lived there, most of them, for their whole lives, 50, 60 years, and they want the community to be a better place, and they see this as a really important first step. And the other thing I would say, as a legal matter, I've been assured by one of the attorneys who works for the Department of Public Health who handles these receivership matters that if a temporary receiver were to take on that obligation and then decide that they could no longer perform it, they can withdraw at any time. So that's something to consider. In any event, I really hope that the Board of Supervisors will take this request seriously, as I know you will, because it is very important to this community. So.
Chairman, may I ask a question? Yes. Ms. Swartz, I'm looking also for commitment from your organization and you. Will you be there to help them complete this process as far as creating a mutual water company or whatever they come up with?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. As Paul mentioned, both Self-Help Enterprises and the Community Water Center are committed to work with this community for as long as it takes to help them through all of the steps of choosing the long-term ownership structure and getting it in place and getting the system out of receivership as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Herrera, and I also work with the Community Water Center. And the reason why I'm here is because, unfortunately, many of our residents from Seville were not able to come. But I do want to present this letter that I know, Supervisor Worthley, we did present to you, just to kind of address some of the concerns that, we know the county would be concerned about, and this was communicated to the community. And I just want to say, the community is very interested and they do want to take back ownership of their own water system. But the truth is that at this point, they can't do that. They're really looking to the county as a support and really your help, because their main concern is they want to ensure that people there continue to have water. And so with that, I ask once again, for your support. And I will say that, both myself and our team at Community Water Center and Self-Help are very committed, along with the community, to help see this possible.
Is that letter the one dated January 5th?
Yes.
I think we've each received one in our packet today,
Okay.
so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Laurel Firestone. I'm co-executive director of the Community Water Center, and I'm privileged to serve on the Water Commission as well. I just wanted to add that Tulare County has taken a leadership role in looking at how to develop long-term solutions to many of the disadvantaged community water needs throughout the county. And I think that this is an example of an opportunity for the board to continue those efforts consistent with the desire to look for long-term, affordable, sustainable, financially sustainable solutions for disadvantaged community water systems. And there's a pilot project that will be starting as soon as bond funds are eventually unfrozen. One of the focuses of that will be looking at how to provide services to a lot of these unincorporated areas, including a lot of the service areas that the county currently serves for water and wastewater systems, and looking at how we might be able to provide those in a more financially sustainable and affordable way while providing basic services like water, drinkable water, and sanitation to all the residents in the county, and particularly in disadvantaged communities. So I would hope that the board would see this as part of those efforts and consistent with those efforts in terms of ensuring that all disadvantaged communities in our county can secure safe, clean, and affordable drinking water, and moving towards more affordable and economically sustainable solutions. And again, we will do everything we can to look to implement the most and implement swiftly the most long-term beneficial solution in terms of what sort of entity may be able to provide those services. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address this issue? Okay, seeing that I know we have a recommendation from our council to continue this until the 24th. Is that correct, council?
I think staff would need direction from your board whether you want this on as an action item and as a closed session item, or if you just want it as a closed session item.
Actually,
I would think
Sounds
both.
like
I would
that was
think
an
both.
action.
I think you're seeing a bunch of nodding heads. Let's set it as both.
And as,
Chairman.
go ahead. Well, I was going to say, Mr. Chairman, as the supervisor representing this area, obviously, I would like to encourage the board to look at this in a favorable light, recognizing that there are issues that along the way that create difficulties for us. But I think if we can see our way through to get to the other side of this in a reasonable period of time, this would be a way for us, because one of the things by doing this is we can establish ownership, and we would be able to be in a position, if there's funding available, to receive those funds to make the improvements for this community, which are desperately needed. We have little wetlands out there, actually, created by the leaking pipes where we have tules growing and so forth. I don't think it's the best use of the water out there.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think this is a result we've seen all over Tulare County of our old general plan that really discouraged growth or investments in these small communities. And when I first started on the board, my first meeting on a community water issue was for Lynn Cove. There's been a lot of dissatisfaction in our small unincorporated communities about not being able to get potable water or get things done. That's turned around substantially in the last 4 years because of the help of the Community Water Coalition, self-help, and a lot of other nonprofits that have been encouraging community involvement. We've seen this in Plainview. We're 2 main lines into Plainview. We're looking at Tuleville with a new well. So I think this is just a progression of upgrading the water systems and eventually the sewer systems in a lot of these small disadvantaged communities that have been long overlooked. I suggested I want to disclose that I met with representatives from the city, from the town, and other representatives, but I suggested that they look at forming a community service district. And the reason for that is that if they form a community service district, that empowers them to do more than just look at the water and sewer issue. And right now, we're going to look into a community that has a community service district to apply for a state grant for park. So if they form under a community service district or a public utility, that gives them other opportunities to improve the communities. So I also like to say that somewhat I view these type of situations as kind of an obligation on the part of the county to step in. And the reason I view that is that these people do not have representations. They do not have mayors. They don't have city councils. And they're barred from a lot of public financing because they do not have a governmental system. And I believe that we're the people to fill that gap until they can get that system put together.
Okay. Do we need to have a motion?
Motion to be the continuous matter to the
continue this.
24th, is that correct?
Matter to 24th, I think you're going to need a new agenda item if you have proposed action, and then we'll see that it's put on for closed session so we can give you legal advice.
Okay, I have a motion by Supervisor Worthley.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Ennis. Cast your votes. It is unanimous.
Thank you,
Okay.
Board.
Thank you, Mr. Fussell. Okay, we have timed items. This time we'll move to item number 4, which is a public hearing, a request from RMA to deny the appeal filed by Renee Garrett and uphold the zoning administrator's denial of zone variance number PZV08026.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Supervisors. Maureen Hopkins with RMA Planning. This item before you is an appeal of the zoning administrator's denial of PZV 08026. The zone variance was requested in order to create 2 2.5-acre parcels from a 5-acre parcel in the AE 40 zone. Site is located on the west side of Road 140, approximately 1,000 feet south of Avenue 344, north of Visalia. The applicant requested the division of the 5-acre parcel into two 2.5-acre parcels so that her son would be able to obtain a loan for a second residence on this additional parcel. The property is able to have 2 houses by right due to the fact that it was created prior to the Rural Valley Lands Plan in 1977. The site as well as the surrounding properties are all zoned AE40. Okay. The parcel is substandard in size. Approximately 13% of the properties within the quarter-mile radius are under 5 acres. The majority of these parcels are either home site parcels or were created prior to 1977. The site is not in an ag preserve, nor are the adjacent sites, but 5 parcels or 44% of the area within a quarter mile of it is in ag preserves. The following pictures reflect Rennie Garrett's residence. The one on the upper right is along the south side of the residence, and the one in the lower middle is looking to the northwest of the site, and it's in back of the residence. Adjacent parcels are all a mixture of agricultural and residential use. And as noted, here's a map reflecting the quarter-mile radius of the ag preserve. And that concludes staff report. And if you have any questions, thank you for your time.
Questions of staff, board?
Oh, yes, I do. I have a question. In the past, we've had multiple housing issues where we created financing parcels.
Yeah, basically, this wouldn't work with a financing parcel because it needs to be the minimum size. And so since it's 5 acres in an AE40, it's substandard. So it wouldn't, that doesn't.
Beverly Cates, Project Review. Also, they would have to have the entire 5 acres would have to be vested in the same person. So by the fact that they want this for their son, she could not have a financing parcel with her son's name on it and still retain the entire parcel.
Yeah, I can see getting around the financing parcel issue by, excuse me, I can't see getting around that issue, but I can see getting around the zoning issue with a variance, because obviously that was created before the zoning was created of AE40, and that's one of those things that we have to deal with all the time. Even the neighbors are zoned AE40, so I believe they can get a zoning variance, but I don't see how you may get around the financing issue.
Any other questions? Okay, this is a public hearing. We'll open it up for public comment. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Rainey Garrett. The county denied my request for a variance based on the Rural Valley Lands Plan, and that they say that splitting the property would reduce any possibility of agricultural production. This is not true. I requested that the parcel be split in half simply because this was recommended to me by the RMA at the county when I filed for the variance. I do not care if the land is split in half or if it is split 1 acre, 4 acres, 2 acres, 3 acres, 1 1/4, 3 1/4. In fact, if it was split 1 1/4, 3 1/4, there would be exactly the same amount of viable agricultural land left, because my piece of property is a very long, narrow strip. And I have the house, a little bit farther back the garage, and a little bit farther back the barn. So 1 1/4 acres of it is used up with buildings. But 3 3/4 acre of it is all empty land. And I would be willing to split it behind there if they want all of the remainder of it left in viable ag. The statement that they make really contradicts itself. The division of the property itself does not generate the ability to put two houses on it. It already has the ability to put two houses on it. The only reason I want it split into whatever size necessary is because my son cannot get a loan with the property being all in one. He needs to have a separate parcel that is a parcel in just his name that he can use to go to a bank to finance. And we already checked into a financing parcel, and there really is not any financial organization at this time that will even finance anything with a financing parcel. So I need to have the piece of property separated and put into I want to give it to him. I'm not trying to do this to, subdivide into 1 acre parcels and make a lot of money. I just want to give part of this land that I'm not using to my son. It can still be used for agricultural purposes. In fact, that is what he wants to use the remainder for. He wants to make it a pasture. The remainder of it would be pasture to put a couple head of cattle on. It is a really poor quality ground. I have nothing but hard pan. To put any kind of a tree crop on it, it would have to be ripped, disced, leveled, all at a considerable cost for a small little 3 3/4 acre piece. But the statement that the county makes that contradicts itself is that they're telling me that splitting the property up would reduce the amount of viable agricultural land. But they're telling me, on the other hand, that I can put another house on it. Well, how does putting another house on it not reduce the amount of viable agricultural land? It simply does. Anybody can see that. Another reason that the county states for denying it was that the increased density on the property would negatively impact other properties. Well, that's another contradiction, because they're already telling me I can put another house on it. So that is, whether I put a house on it the way it is now, or whether we put another house on it after we split it, it is going to be the same thing. It is still going to have an impact by taking up that area that the house is going to sit on. I guess the last thing I have to say is that another thing that they quoted was that the Tulare County Draft General Plan states that the county shall deny requests to create parcels less than the minimum allowed size in agriculturally designated areas. If this is in fact true, then why did the county let me stand there at the counter, say what I wanted to do, and let me give them money if it's going to be denied, if it is in fact a law or a rule that it is going to be denied? I think they should have told me that at the counter instead of encouraging me to apply for it. I had a lady stand at the counter with me, look at the map, and say, well, I think, it'll probably be okay because all of these areas have been split up. It's been done in your area before. She actually gave me words of encouragement and made me think it was going to be possible. She did not say, this is against the rules, you're not going to get it, don't waste your money. There's no sign there saying, don't waste your money, this is not going to happen. It's against the rules. I mean, I've been led to believe the whole time that, or I was until I went to the meeting, that it would be possible. And on top of that, I paid the fee, which was $1,500 to apply for the variance. Now they're billing me. Then I had to pay another $321 to come to this hearing, and now they're billing me for another $550 for extra amount of time that they had to put into research. If this is such a simple matter of, no, this is not allowed, so no, we can't do it. I don't understand how come it took so much research, and I'm not now going to have to pay another $550 for them to still tell me no. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions, or do I sit down?
Have any questions for her? Is there anyone else here that would like to speak to this matter? Okay, seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing, bring it back to the board, and I can tell you, Ms. Garrett, that this board is put in these type of situations because of decisions that were made many years ago. If you look at the properties around you, we have a bunch of 1.5 or 1.8 acre AE40 sites, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to this supervisor, and we're being asked almost on a monthly basis to correct things that were done by prior board of supervisors 20, 30, 40 years ago. So I share in your frustration. I'll bring this back to the board for discussion, consideration.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly can understand the applicant's frustration. There is a policy issue here, I think, that is, at first blush, it might appear to be somewhat silly, as she would indicate, to allow a second residence to be on this property, but not to allow the property to be split. I would submit that there is a very strong policy reason why that is the case, and that is that if this applicant could do this, I dare say there's 1,000 applicants that could do the same thing in the county. And the goal of this board apparently has been for many, many years before we came on board was to try to protect agricultural property and not to allow further splitting of properties into small parcels. This board is aware of the fact that there's an effort made to try to create very dense type of development going forward in the future, and we don't necessarily agree with the type of density they're talking about, but if we were to apply it to this land, we'd be saying that we'd be putting 30 houses on an acre. Isn't that where the goal would be? So we'd be talking about 60 houses on this, or well, even more. That's not the intent here, but the problem is if you split off, let's say, an acre and a quarter for this person, and her son has the other 3 3/4, and he wants to split it off to give to his child, something like that, you end up with a splitting. And that is contrary to the overall goal of trying to preserve agricultural property in agriculturally zoned areas. So my empathy with this applicant really is more in the misinformation I think she received from our staff in terms of being encouraged to seek this variance, because as long as I've been on the board, I'm never aware if we've ever granted a variance like this, and that's 10 years. So my sense is I would, glad to hear from the rest of the members, but I'd like to deny the appeal, but I'd like to also waive, at the very least, her appeal fees to this board and any additional cost that she's being charged now, the $500. I mean, she's already paid off $1,500, but to me, it's insult to injury to have her pay, even though we've incurred these expenses, to have this hearing and to have the work done. I think it's only fair that she not have to bear those costs going forward.
Was that a motion?
I'd be glad to make the motion if no one else has any other further comments.
Any other comments?
I have a comment. I concur with Supervisor Worthley. I'm surrounded by 5-acre parcels where I farm. And if we open the door to one to be split, I'm going to have a lot of neighbors out there in the middle of nowhere that's truly agricultural land, and those small parcels, many of them do create a lot of difficulty for us farmers. So I would suggest again that you could probably get a financing parcel so you could finance the other home, but as to a separate deed to split this property, it goes against existing board policies to do that. I also concur with Supervisor Worthley that I understand your frustration, and not only frustration, probably a little anger, that I would support the waiving of the fees that Supervisor Worthley mentioned.
I'll allow one more comment. Go ahead.
I am all for preserving ag land. And it does not always seem to me like that is what I see ag land being split into subdivisions, viable ag land that's in production is being put into subdivisions all around our county. Now, I understand you're saying that if we let her do it, then everybody else is going to want to do it. But if the county is not willing to look at each individual piece of property and see that there could be special circumstances, in fact, under special circumstances, they do allow it. But if they're not going to be willing to look at the special circumstances and just say, no, we don't do this, then say that up front. Why was I encouraged to give my money or even allowed to give my money? That is what I am past the point now. I've reconciled with the fact that the county is going to say no. But I paid a lot of money to ask for this variance. Why do they even allow it to be done? There should be a sign up saying, you don't apply for a variance because you're not going to get it. Who throws money away like that? And that is what I am so upset about. I want my money back. They already knew beforehand that they weren't going to do it. Why did you make me pay? Why did you allow me to just fork out the money?
Okay.
That's what I'm upset about.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Vanderpool.
Yeah, Ms. Garrett, I understand your sentiment, and one of the points that I have incurred in talking to people during the campaign, to talking to people about how I'm liking it so far, is I think that we need to make sure that this government, in any facet, whatever department you're dealing with, is user friendly, because that's why we're here. We're here to function for the people, and so we need to work within our departments to make sure that when we're sending a message, we're sending a clear message that makes sense, and so you don't end up walking down a path like you have walked down. And so my thoughts are with you, but I don't know what else I can do other than that. But I understand where you're coming from, and I think that's part of at least my mission statement to work towards that end. So,
Supervisor Ennis, do you have a comment?
No, I would agree with Pete on that. That hey, you go into some place and we have rules set up. Person says, I want to do this, and say, well, you can't do it. You can't do it. If you want to spend the money and try it, go ahead, but you can't do it. So we need to be more specific. When these rules are set down, we need to stay behind them, and the people enforcing them need to say, no, it will not happen. Not with the rules and not with the general plan we have.
Supervisor Ishida, was that a second?
Yes.
Supervisor Woodley's motion. Okay, please cast your votes. Ms. Garrett, there, I'm sorry. This happened. Staff has been directed to issue a credit for the 531, whatever it was, and reimburse your application fee for this hearing. So, again, we sympathize with you and apologize for that happening, but that's our decision. Okay, we have the next public hearing, number 5. At this time, I will recuse myself from items 5, 6, and 7 because of a business relationship I've had with Mr. Welch. I've recused myself in the past from each step of this proceeding, so this should be no surprise to anyone. So I recuse myself from items 5, 6, and 7, and then you can come get me when we're done. Supervisor Worthley is aware of that, and we'll conduct this part of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may proceed.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Dana Metlin with RMA Planning Division. And the item before you today is a request for General Plan Amendment number GPA 08-003 and change of zone number PZ 08-005. The project is located on the northeast corner of Road 162 and Avenue 296, north of Farmersville. The proposal is to expand the urban development boundary and amend the Farmersville area land use plan to change the land use designation from agriculture to service commercial on a 2.03 acre parcel, and also a change of zone from the AE 20 exclusive agricultural 20 acre minimum to the C3SC SR service commercial scenic corridor site review combining. On November 18, 2008, your board heard an appeal of Planning Commission's denial of this project, and at that meeting, your board approved the appeal. This item has come before your board today for formal action on the resolution to adopt the amendment to the urban boundaries element for the Farmersville Area Land Use Plan and amend the Farmersville Area Land Use Plan to change the land use designation from agricultural to commercial for GPA 08-003, and also to adopt the amendment to ordinance number 352 and change the zone from AE 20 to C3 SCSR for the zone change PZ 08-005. And subject to any questions that you may have, that concludes staff's report on this item.
Any questions from members? If not, this is a public hearing. We'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the board on this matter is invited to come forward this time. Seeing and hearing no one, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for action.
Chairman,
Yes.
I addressed the board the last time this came up in front of us. I do agree this parcel is wrongly zoned, but I do not agree with the commercial service zoning. Your other small parcels around are A1 residential, and that's what the neighborhood is. So I will again vote against changing the zoning.
We have had this matter come before the board before, and the purpose of making the application, we go through a process in Tulare County of requiring a general plan amendment to require that a request be made from this board to get a permission to do so, which was granted. And so today we now are at the point of making the ultimate decision. Are there other comments or questions? I would only say that if staff would like to say something, go ahead.
Yes. This is an item of a general plan amendment, and we can only take 4 actions per year, so we do need to take up the other item before you take action.
That's true. There are 2, aren't there? Yes. Okay.
There's 2 on it.
Let's do that then before we proceed with our conversation. There's another item that's here, and the staff will make a report on that. Then we will open the public hearing as to that item.
Good afternoon, Nick Hahn, RMA Planning Division. The item before you is a request by Rock Creek Properties for an amendment to Three Rivers Community Plan and a change of zone on approximately 27 acres located on the east side of State Highway 198, approximately 1/4 mile north of Eggers Drive in Three Rivers. The current land use designations for the site include multiple family residential. It's not more than 12 families per acre, which is shown in the brown, occupies the western portion of the site. Medium density residential, not more than 1 family per acre, shown on the map in mustard yellow, and occupies the eastern portion of the site. And agriculture, which is shown in green, occupies the northern portion of the site. The northeast 6.15 acres are zoned C2 SC, general commercial scenic corridor, and contain a single-family dwelling. The southeast 15.8 acres are zoned RA43 and contain a triplex. The west 4.65 acres are zoned R3, multiple family, and are devoid of any improvements. The change of zone proposes to reconfigure the existing zones of the site to implement consistency with the proposed land use designations. The 5.25 acres located adjacent to State Highway 198 are proposed to be zoned C2 SC. Approximately 7.38 acres are proposed to be zoned RA43. The RA43 zoning will occupy 2 portions of the site, and that will be on the southern portion and the northern portion of the site. Approximately 14.05 acres are proposed to be zoned R3. This slide contains 2 tables that illustrate how many acres are located within each land use designation and each zone as the site exists now and compared to what is proposed. And here is a view of the site as seen from State Highway 198 facing east toward the existing triplex. This photograph was taken facing southwest portion of the site, as shown looking in a southwest direction along State Highway 198. And this photograph illustrates the location of the site in relation to the surrounding areas. State Highway 198 and Main Fork Quia River are located west of the site. The Planning Commission at the regular meeting on September 10th recommended approval of general plan amendment and change of zone as modified to C2 SCSR, that would be General Commercial Scenic Corridor Site Plan Review Zone. Subject to any question you have, that concludes staff's presentation.
Any questions, staff? Very good. If not, we will open the public hearing on this matter. Anyone wishing to address the board on this portion of the general plan amendments, encouraged to come forward. Seeing, hearing no one, we'll close the public hearing and now bring the entire package back to the board for discussion. I just wanted to comment briefly on the comment made by Mr. Ishida that in looking at the staff report, and I refer to page 3, there's actually a multitude of different zonings around this property. The northeast 6.15 acres are zone C2 scenic corridor. The southeast 15 acres are rural residential. The west 4 acres are zoned R3 multiple family. Properties to the north are zoned R3. So we actually have there's a mixture of uses in this property, and I disagree that the requested use of this property is at odds with the property which surrounds it and is really consistent with its location adjacent to a freeway interchange. That was my position at the previous hearing as well. So,
Chairman,
yeah.
I have a question. On the Three Rivers piece, could you put the aerial back up, please? How far is the Holiday Inn from this property? I mean, the Comfort Inn?
The bird's eye view.
Well, I think it is. I think it is a ways away from it. So. Okay. Thank you.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Well, my pleasure is you have two different items here, and I support one, and I really don't support the other, and it kind of puts me in an awkward position to have that arrive in an agenda item. But I will.
Go ahead, get it out.
I'm not sure.
Go ahead, get it out.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I might suggest, the item that's before you right now is the general plan amendment. There are then 2 items regarding zoning changes, and those items are separate. So if Supervisor Ishida wanted to vote against the zoning change, there is an opportunity for him to do that, I think, in the next item.
Does it help you with your motion then?
That would be my motion.
Your motion is to approve the general plan amendment?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, I'll second that.
All right. Further discussion? If not, please cast your votes. Mr. Ennis, you need to tell us what your vote is.
No, I voted.
Yeah, but you also have abstention on there too.
Sorry about that.
Vote will reflect a 4-0 yes vote for the general plan amendment. Brings us to item number 6.
This is the companion zone change for the general plan amendment, and we don't have a separate presentation for that.
All right, so this is the issue. This is your opportunity,
This is also
Mr. Ishida, to dissent, I suspect. Are there any questions of staff? Okay, this is a public hearing also, so we will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to address this is item number 6, change of zone for PZ 08005, the Farmersville property. Anyone wishing to address this matter at this time, we encourage to come forward.
Is that the piece that they were going to rezone from agriculture to commercial?
Yes.
Well, my only question...
Well, Mr. Sir, if you want to address us, you need to come forward and give us your name and address and go through the process.
My name is Gary Yeti. My address is 1720 West Laurel Avenue in Visalia, California. My only question is, if you're going to deny this woman who has 5 acres of land, which is obviously a home site, and she wants to divide it in two pieces, and your concern is to keep agricultural land, why are you taking a bigger piece of agricultural land and converting it over to commercial property? That does not make sense to me.
Sir, you must be talking about the Three Rivers parcel.
No, I think he's talking about this.
Talking about the Farmersville property. The one that you were in agreement with me on. But it does not make sense to me that you would take a bigger piece of property that's agricultural, convert it over to commercial when you're going to deny this woman 5 acres, which is obviously a home site, and you're going to deny her. That just does not make any sense to me whatsoever.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can simply, I guess I can respond to this somewhat quickly, I think, and that is, just as the comment was made about property being converted from agriculture to residential uses, we do this in the context of city plans and general plans. So this is an area that has commercial and urban uses, as opposed to being out in the middle of the country as the other person's property is. But that is the difference. Sir, we're not here to engage in debate. I'm trying to explain to you the difference.
The woman that had the 5-acre piece that wanted to divide it in 2.5, there were 1-acre parcels and there were smaller parcels all around there, so those parcels didn't conform. It just does not seem fair to me that you would do this to a woman who has a piece of property that's obviously a home
sir, you've made your
site.
point. We understand your point. I was trying to explain to you this is a separate matter and it's a different issue, the way it's handled. Is there anybody else wishing to address the board on this matter? Mr. Boyer?
I have my Farmersville City Council hat on now, and I talked with our city manager about this issue, and, the policy, at least for the city of Farmersville, is that we feel that, the proposed change is in conformance with our, long-term goals for that area, so we do not have a problem with this change.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? We'll close the hearing and bring it back to the board for action. Again, this is an action to change the zone on this Farmersville property from agricultural to, I lost my place here, commercial property.
Move for approval.
Motion?
I'll second.
Second. Cast your votes.
Chairman?
You're casting a no vote, I take it, Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Okay, it doesn't reflect that up there. So the vote would be 3-4 yes and 1 no vote. Motion
Chairman,
passes.
we're not completely sure that is a vote. I'm trying to check, because it is a change to your zoning ordinance. And there's only 4 of you here. And a 4/5 vote may be required. So we're checking.
And how long are we waiting for this information?
Well, I've been waiting a while.
Mickey Mouse looking no voter. There you go. It's working. Yeah.
Hey, you press the abstain on there. There you go.
Council, I just note that normally when we require a 4/5 vote, it's stated in the agenda, and I don't see that in this particular case.
And I'm hoping that you are correct. Ms., we had a question raised by staff, and I simply don't have the in my head. There are about 3 pages of different items that require 4/5 votes.
Perhaps we can move on to the next item while we're waiting for the
That would
response.
be,
Wait, we'll go on to item number 7, which is a public hearing.
This is the companion zone change for the general plan amendment in Three Rivers, and again, we do not have a separate presentation for that item.
Any questions from board members? If not, this is a public hearing. We'll open the hearing on item PZ 07011, Three Rivers change of zone request. Anyone wishing to appear on that matter, speak on behalf of it or against it? Seeing and hearing no one, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the board for action.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please cast your votes. And that one is 4 votes yes. So we know that one must pass. Still waiting to hear on item number.
I have a cast of thousands searching this out as we speak.
Well, let's wait till we're done with it. So.
I do have that they're looking. You are correct, Supervisor, that generally staff would put on the agenda item itself. But since I was asked the question, I feel that I need to answer the question so that we don't turn a null vote into a vote.
No, we're not quite done yet. We're waiting to find out whether it takes a 4/5 vote. Let's take a 5-minute recess and we'll come back.
Airport Land Use Commission in the morning.
Bring up again item number 6 after our council has indicated that it does not require a 4/5 vote, so item number 6 is passed on a 3-to-1 vote. And now, Mr. Chairman, you're welcome back to the stage. Thank you. We will now move to item number 28, which is a request from our HR development to approve a Medco RX discount card program. And I see Mr. Huntley making his way forward now.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. On January the 28th, at a meeting of the CSAC Excess Insurance Authority, of which we are a party and who is the provider of the county's health insurance, we were advised of a discount card program for individuals who are not covered under the county's insurance. This program was presented conceptually to us, and in light of the layoffs which have occurred and which are still pending, I'm here today to recommend that you authorize us to participate in this program. There is a 60-day waiting period, or actually a 60-day setup period, for Medco to make this program function. So what we need to do is for the employees who are being laid off, the earliest date at which their health insurance would end would be the end of February. So we would want to encourage those folks to take advantage of the mail order program now in effect and get a 90-day supply. And then for those who have chosen not to participate in COBRA, which is the continuation of health insurance, we'd like to give them the opportunity to sign up for this program. And if they would do so, the estimated savings are variable, but if you were to go to a retail outlet for drugs, a brand name, they estimate a savings of about 13% on the purchase price. Generic drugs about 39%. On mail order, there would be about a 21% discount for the brand drugs and a 46% for the generics. So this would at least represent some kind of an opportunity for individuals who otherwise don't have insurance to get some discount to meet their pharmaceutical needs. The other issue, the other benefit of this is it is the guaranteed lower price of the discount or the usual and customary charges for drugs. So, for example, Costco, Walmart, Target, who have $4, or some of them have $4 generic drugs, this card could also be used for that, and they would be guaranteed either the $4 price or whatever the discount price, whichever is lower. The cost to the county for this program is $2.50 per employee plus postage, so we've estimated it about $3 per employee. It's a one-time only cost. The only additional cost for the county would be to create a mechanism for maintaining eligibility so that Medco could keep track of the folks. And in the worst case scenario, we would expect to be able to do that in-house if we can't get our third-party administrator to do it for us at a reasonable price. Because we don't have all the paperwork and because we're attempting to expedite this, I've made the recommendation contingent upon County Council and their staff making sure all the supporting documentation meets any concerns or criteria of liability that the county might have, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Tim, this is something we'd pick up the cost of, correct, as a county would?
I'm recommending we pick up the cost for the employees who are being laid off, yes.
And then we'd offer assistance to fill out any forms that needed to be filled out, or is it a one-page form that we fill out in their behalf?
They would need to fill out the form. We will have the forms available. We will provide them to them. It's just like an enrollment form that you would typically have, yes, and then we would do the work from there.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion then.
Move for approval.
Second. Motion by Mr. Ennis, second by Mr. Vanderpool. Cast your votes.
Thank you very
Approval
much.
is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, at this time we will move to our final untimed item number 29, and I think we'll turn this over to Mr. Russo for the presentation.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. Today I will be giving a presentation, a review of the Board of Supervisors salary process, salary adjustment, and some comparative information. Thank you very much, and I will do it from the dais. Now I want to start, before I go into my slide presentation, I want to start by saying that we understand that this issue has become emotionally charged in the community. It's been difficult for staff in my office and myself personally and professionally to deal with. We go about our jobs in the county administrative office, and we try to do the best we can and do what's best, what we feel for the county. Not everyone's going to be in agreement with decisions that we make and things that we do, but that's what we ultimately have in our hearts and soul when we go about our daily public work for the county. So I just wanted to state that it has been somewhat difficult on staff that have been accused of using cryptic and deceptive language when that was anything but the truth. And I wanted to go on record and make that statement because I think it needs to be said. Before I go any further, though, and on a lighter note, personally, 31 years ago, I asked a young lady who I was going to high school with on a first date, and today's our 31-year anniversary. Actually, it's our 31-year first date anniversary.
You don't look that old.
Thank you. And so I just wanted to make that comment publicly. I'm very fortunate to have met her and for her to be with me today. And I also want to thank staff person Carrie Boggs for preparing this slide presentation. She did a great job in a very short notice, so I appreciate it if she's out there somewhere. So we'll start. I wanted to go through the timeline and in the thought process what there was or what there wasn't at various points in the calendar year that brought us to this agenda presentation. We started working on the salary package that we being the county, started working on it with HR and with the County Administrative Office, and as soon as we got back from our last year's trip to Washington, D.C., which was a lot more temperate in climate than it was this year. Last year we received approximately $8.5 million in federal monies for predominantly for Success Dam, which we're fighting with the Army Corps to get going on the project, and $500,000 in some studies for flood control in our county, of which the Army Corps is sitting on that too, apparently. We also made some headway, and as the supervisors indicated, on the transportation side, working really on what we thought was this year's transportation bill, which could flow into next year, as we found out. We started working on the numbers, and it was pretty clear that we felt that a one-year package would be appropriate due to the economic uncertainty that we were experiencing or feeling at that time. And again, this is February or March of 2008. We came up with the numbers, which were approximately, as we all have talked about, approximately 3% in salary, and a $500 bonus, because we did have some one-time monies from the prior year budget that we felt was appropriate to put in this package. Again, it wouldn't be ongoing. It would be an attempt for the county's sake to give some one-time monies back to its employees. Around that time, and we've mentioned lobbying a few times. Around that time in May, we went to we were lobbying at the state level, and Supervisor Ennis lobbied for the disadvantaged communities' water systems, and we were given a $2 million appropriation with bond monies that have not been sold yet, granted, to look at come up with regional solutions for our disadvantaged communities' water system. The feds and state are tired of the patchwork approach we've used in the past, and they've granted us $2 million to look into that. And one of the reasons why we received those monies is because we partnered with the Water Commission, partnered with environmental groups in this area, which was probably unheard of, and certainly was a surprise up in Sacramento when we met with our legislators. But they were it was very convincing, and they felt it significant enough to put $2 million in the budget. We started negotiating in early spring with SEIU. We met on a regular basis. We reached and declared impasse in August of that year. At that time, approximately in August, we found out our retirement plan had decreased in value by $80 million, or a little bit less than 10%, about 8%. We followed the impasse procedure, which included mediation, board testimony, and we ultimately, and I recommended, unilaterally imposing that in September in the board meeting, I believe September 30th. That's been brought up over and over again. The language that we used in the agenda addressed a number of different aspects of the plan, and so staff in our office changed the language to add some clarity and make it grammatically correct. We certainly didn't do it for any other reason other than that. Also, so going through the year, this is around September. In October, we found out from, and our Health and Human Services officials found out that realignment, we would not receive our base funding in realignment, that we would be reduced by approximately $5 million. We spent a significant amount of time in Sacramento and on the phones with our legislators trying to get that changed, as we do in most of our dealings with the state officials when we go to conferences for CSAC and what have you. We were unsuccessful with that, and that has had a ripple effect up and down the state. Also around that time, excuse me for 1 second, SEIU felt a need to strike, and they struck. And Around that time, we received the first of 3 death threats. I found a bullet casing in front of my office door one morning. And it kind of reminded me of a movie I saw this weekend called The Insider, where he found a bullet inside of his post box. You know, that comes with the territory, apparently. It doesn't make these type of decisions any easier, because what we did, we felt, and I feel today was the right thing to do, difficult as it may be. But it does add some level of concern to both myself, my concern for my staff, and quite frankly, its effects on my family. You know, working my way through the year, around that time the state reopened its budget and started talking about deferring and or eliminating some programs that they had already passed 2 months earlier. And what I'm speaking about specifically is the Williamson Act. We have a $3 million plus hit on the county budget. Local public safety programs, again, programs that they passed in the budget with 10% reductions, they were now wanting to defund, not only for this year but for next year, and we're still fighting that battle. And probably worse, they're talking about deferring potentially 7 months worth of state revenues that the counties desperately need to administer the social service programs, road programs, welfare payments, food stamp payments, you name it. And counties up and down the state are fighting that battle as we speak. So we approach January. A part of, let me back up a little bit. In December, I met with the director of Social Services Department, and we had a very sobering meeting. When he shared with me the extent of the cuts that he felt he needed to do to bring his budget in line. That was probably the most difficult meeting I've had since I've been a county administrative officer. It's not easy considering or having to talk about laying off anybody, yet alone 200 individuals, and 200 folks that John and his staff know probably on a personal basis. That was very difficult. We met quite a few times subsequent to that meeting, and it was pretty clear that that's something we needed to do or had to do. So we decided when would be the best timing to roll this out, and boy, what a time, what a thing to consider. You let people know before Christmas, around Christmas time, after Christmas. They also were going through an agency shop vote that we didn't want to interfere with. So we ultimately decided, as everyone is probably aware, to notify folks at, the week after Christmas. Again, that was probably one of my least favorite weeks in my life, but one that we had to experience. We notified folks. We started the meet and confer process with the union, and so I wanted to talk about this last calendar year in the context of all that was going on, and this just touches on the payroll aspect and what's happened in our social services department. There's a lot of other things that we're involved in, and I'll get into it in a little bit. Around that time also in January, we found out that our retirement plan since June had lost 20% of its value. So it had started the fiscal year before at approximately $1.05 billion in value. As of November of 2008, it decreased in value to $750 million, which we found out in January. So with that context, let's look at I want to review the salary adjustment process. And I will say this, I'll end that context with my first cognitive thought about the increase to the board salaries happened on January 6th when I saw a union member walk by with a flyer. That was the first time we actually thought about it. At least I did. Should I have thought about it sooner? Perhaps. I'm still a new CAO, and I'm not going to cover everything, and I'm going to make mistakes along the way. So anyway, salary adjustment process. The salary adjustment process was adopted in 1994 by Ordinance Code Chapter 7, Article 3, Section 1-07-1060. It essentially ties the Board of Supervisors' salaries to the other elected officials in our county. The auditor, the assessor, the the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, elections clerk, the assessor, the district attorney, and sheriff coroner. What we did is we felt it necessary to join in the dialogue about our process and compare ourselves to the neighboring counties in the valley to see how they adjust their supervisor salaries. And as you can see, 3 counties are tied to judges' salaries at different percentages. I believe Fresno at 60%, Merced at 54 point something, and Madera at 40%. 2 counties are tied to some of their employee groups, Kern and San Joaquin. 1 county is not tied to anything, and any time they want to adjust their board salaries, they bring a agenda item under the Brown Act to the board, and they address it publicly, which is Kings County, our neighbor. And last but not least, Stanislaus County came up with a very exotic formula where they're 20% below the average of 8 specified counties, and those counties are in the agenda item for your review. What I'm most proud of with our ordinance, quite frankly, is the fact that in reviewing the other counties, we're the only county in the valley that has a public notice. We publicly notice salary increases 60 days and have a 60-day review period or delay period until it goes into effect. Again, Kings County, because they increase the board salaries based on agendas they bring to the board. It's whenever they post it. The other counties in the valley, the 6 remaining counties, don't post anything. Don't notify anybody. Don't have anything included in their agenda items. It's an automatic process on autopilot, like really ours has been for 15 years. Here's some information. Again, just some comparative information. Take it for what you will. Comparing the board salaries to, again, to the 8 counties that we're talking about. The 9th Valley County is Mariposa, and it would be just too small and to even bother comparing to. But of the 8 counties that we compare to, the remaining 8 counties in the valley, as you can see, before this proposed increase goes into effect or doesn't go into effect, we are 4th on the list of salaries in other counties. And when you compare the Board of Supervisors' salary to the total budget, we are well down the list. We are 7th out of 8 counties. We also wanted to look at support staff. It's not just enough to compare salaries from board members to board members without knowing the full picture of their level of involvement, how many staff members they have, how big the county that they oversee is. There's a lot to consider when looking at a salary and whether it's appropriate or not, too much or too low. And as you can see on this chart, it indicates that we are in terms of population, we are the 5th out of the 8 counties that we looked at. In terms of number of staff, we have 2 outstanding board representatives. Jeff Forbes was introduced earlier in the day. Jed, his last name always escapes me, Chernovayev, is the other board rep. They do a great job. We have 2 full-time staffers. So you can see in Fresno, they have 2 per board member, or 10 total. Kern County has 4 staffers, a little over 4 staffers per board member and a part-timer. San Joaquin County, Stanislaus, and Madera each have 1 staff person per board member. Merced doesn't have any full-time, and Kings County doesn't have any full-time or part-time board assistants. The next chart will show how much the support staff costs us in the budget and the Board of Supervisors salary. So as you can see, our staff costs are 6th highest out of the 8 counties, and at the same time the board salaries are 4th highest on that group. The next chart is the supportive staff as a percent of total population. That's a typical measurement. It's another way of looking at it. And again, we're still 7th out of 8 on support staff and 5th out of the 8 in terms of the board salaries as a per 10,000 total population. I'll go further and say that support staff is Tulare County 65.3% below the average salaries of support staff. So the average of the 8 counties is 7,637 per 10,000 in population. We are 65.3% below that. The average for the Board of Supervisors salaries per 10,000 in population is 19,857, and we are 33.1% below that. You know, being an accountant, I can spend a lot of time looking at numbers and looking at comparisons because I'm comfortable in the world of numbers. But I felt it necessary to go a step further. And again, this is my presentation. This has not been shown to anybody, and it's been shown to the board for the first time. I want to make that clear too. I just wanted to paint the picture of just how involved this board is in a number of commissions, boards, meetings, and this doesn't include other things that are involved in terms of the various fundraisers that they go to and community meetings, and these folks are busy sometimes 6-7 days a week and work their tails off, quite frankly. Starting with Alan, as you can see, he's involved in a number of different organizations. I'll highlight just a few. The second one, the CSAC Ag and Natural Resources Committee. He is fighting diligently to preserve the Williamson Act at the state level. And as you can see, if you've not participated in these conferences, not all counties participate. So what you're looking at is you're looking at counties, board members with staff that don't participate at the statewide level and play and have no influence over state policy whatsoever in some cases. And in some cases, the counties that I'm referring to are the larger counties. They really should play a role. And we've expressed some frustration with our neighbors in not participating in the process. It's important. It really is. If we don't, we have nothing to complain about. We're subject to what the state and the rest of the bigger regions are going to do to us. The other 2 agencies I'll touch on briefly are the LAFCO, probably approximately 5 down. That's a local commission that reviews land use issues. It's an important commission. If you have some concerns about sprawl and development and the preservation of ag land, you should go to LAFCO meetings. You should participate in that process. It's an important process, obviously, in order to preserve the agriculture community that we all love and dear. Last but not least is the Tulare County Water Commission on the bottom. That was something that the Supervisor Ishida, initiated his first or second year on the board, and it's a great commission. We brought together the irrigation districts, the environmental groups, and these folks are actually talking for the first time about water recharge opportunities. In Kern County, their aquifer is in good shape. They've been recharging their aquifers for some time. They've been buying water from our districts. We've not done that. We're looking at doing that now. We're talking as a group. Those are great meetings. They also periodically include the cities, which are looking at recharging their aquifers. We've made leaps and bounds in this particular area from where we were when I first came to the county in June of 2004. And our office is participating with the $2 million that Supervisor Ennis helped attract from the state in that water study with the group that just spoke earlier about the Seville Water District. We've identified every district in our county, every well, every sewer system, and we're going to try to take a regional approach to addressing that. We don't get that word out as much as we do. It's a heck of an effort, and it's a lot to be proud of. Working way down the list is Pete Vanderpool's list. He's a new guy on the board. Talk about trial by fire. It's something else. He's got an accounting background, so I look forward to working with him on the Government Finance and Operations Committee. Our state financing system is broken, has been broken for some time. To say it's a joke would probably be underplaying it at this point. It's untenable what we're going through at the state level, waiting for them to make their decisions. So that's one I wanted to point out. And another one is the KT AAA, another program whose funding has been cut significantly, and that's an area that's going to change whether we like it or not. The next group is Chairman Cox. Chairman Cox, as I refer to him as a gang czar and Mr. Measure R, has a lot to be proud of since he's been on the board. He participates in, let's see here, as he indicated earlier, he just went to a board of directors meeting that he really didn't want to go to in Sacramento. And it was a good meeting because the time that we're going through is probably is extremely historic. It's very difficult in terms of considering what we're going to have to go through if we have to wait 7 months for and defer approximately $80 million in state revenues. What would the world be like if we had to do that? The reduction or the deferral to LA County would be $1.4 billion. So Supervisor Cox went up to Sacramento to talk and strategize with his county brethren to come up with an approach to deal with a state that's considering doing it to us. He's also involved quite a bit in a number of organizations, but the three that really strike me are the First Five Commission, which he's taken a significant role in. That's another pot of money that the state's wanting to take and spend and do its own thing with. And he's now joined the Retirement Association Board at a very interesting time when our values decreased by over 30%. You know, the future holds increased pension costs, and that's going to have a negative effect on the budget for years to come. So we need his strong support on that board. Working my way to Supervisor Worthley. He's the vice chair this year, and he plays a significant role in a number of boards that we have a lot to be proud of, one of which is a Commission on State Mandates. Talk about hitting your head against the wall. Working with the state and trying to stop them from forcing mandated services down our throats, our being the county throats, and not funding them. He's done a great job on the board and has turned. It's not going to turn things around, but he's filled a heck of a role on that board, and I've heard a lot of compliments about your involvement. Another board he's involved in is the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control Board, and he's played a pivotal role on that, or a strong role on that, and he's helped bring a lot of information back to this board to help us make decisions with air and pollution issues in mind. So he also is on LAFCO, and again, I strongly urge folks, if you've got issues with sprawl and other things, go to LAFCO meetings, because it's the county board members that are sensitive to sprawl, recognize the importance of the Rural Valley Lands Plan in reducing sprawl, and the importance of sphere increases by cities that will create sprawl. So again, I strongly urge you folks to go to LAFCO meetings. Last but not least, Supervisor Ennis is on a number of boards, and as he indicated earlier, lake success is one of his big issues. That dam above his community is potential danger. We in the emergency services area and the EOC area have identified that as one of our biggest potential problems if something happens catastrophic. So we work diligently in terms of water issues. That's got to be one of the top water issues for this county. And Supervisor Ennis has done a great job in that regard. He also, and it's not listed here, is working with the Forest Service on forest management issues. Our forests aren't managed as well as they should, and if we ever have fires that run through there, you think Australia's burning like crazy. You haven't seen anything yet, truly, and it's a big problem. He's also on the board on the Water Commission. That's why he helped lobby in Sacramento successfully with our lobbyists, and he plays a role. And again, I'm highlighting just a few in the Workforce Investment Board to make sure that they stick to their mission and they help all displaced workers find employment. So I wanted to, before I continue, it's not just enough to look at numbers and to compare numbers, compare budgets, compare salaries. You have to look at the involvement of your board, both statewide and local organizations. And having had firsthand experience at we go to 2 county, State Association of County conferences a year, what's referred to as a LEDGE conference in May, which is essentially a lobbying conference, and then the annual conference in November, December. It's important that you participate in those to find out what other counties are going through and to strategize on ways to address them as a region. It's very important. And again, some counties don't participate. Our county fortunately does and protects our interest while they're doing it. So, with that being said, I'll go on to the next slide. This is a recap of the various bargaining units and what percentage increase they received. And as you can see, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the top 6 were just recently negotiated. I gave directions, or I recommended approximately 3%. Again, 3%, continue insurance, and the $500 bonus. Our HR director, who's one of the most creative negotiators probably in the history of the world, has come up with a number of ways to shift dollars and get deals done. And so that's why you'll see a 3.4 for GLA. And the 3.0 for the other 2 when the top 3 only received 2.75, because he mixed things around to get deals done. He did a great job, Tim. The elected officials, which is why we're here today, received a 4.56. They haven't received it yet. It was publicly noticed on the 6th of January, the same day we had the agenda item to discuss the layoffs, and that was not a pleasant day. The calculation is simple. During the year, we look at our elected officials' salaries on a periodic basis. The assessor has been in office for 5-6 terms. Hadn't received a pay increase in 10 years. Is literally in the bottom 3 counties in terms of pay. We're not sure if and when he's going to retire. We felt the need to adjust his salary to make it relatively competitive. He's still on the bottom tier of assessors, but that adjustment was done, 10%. When you add that to the 2.75% that the other 3 automatically received, again, that was my recommendation to the board. In hindsight, I might have done things differently. And the reality is, if things continue to deteriorate, we'll probably look at furloughs and taking some of that, if not all that, or more back to make ends meet going forward. But I recommended to the board that the 2.75 not only be given to SEIU and imposed upon them, but I also recommended that that be given to the unrepresented folks, in part for morale reasons. Again, the buck stops with me. That was a recommendation that I made. They accepted, and we're going to have to make it work. Again, if the future continues to deteriorate, if the economy continues to deteriorate, and the state budget is still woefully being argued about or negotiated by 5 human beings up in Sacramento, we're going to have to probably do some additional reductions. Last but not least, our public safety unions. We entered into multi-year deals with last year, or 2 years ago, excuse me, their deals, their increase is 6% and 7% accordingly. What's not on here is that the bottom two, the DSA and PLEMA's contracts end in June of 2010, and everyone else's contract or salaries contract expires in December of this year. We threw this in there in terms of allocated positions, looking at the total salary increase from a global perspective, which is how I view life. Allocated positions, again, about approximately 7.5 million. The current field position, 6.4 million, and that's before any revenue offsets and subvented revenue. Again, it'd be nice to have the subvented revenue information, but that's just for conversation purposes. So, my recommendation at this point is, after doing the survey, seeing that we're the only county in the valley that publicly notices our salary increase, I'm comfortable with the process we have in place. You might not like it, but it's publicly noticed. You have a chance to come and complain, or speak your mind, or come see me, or call the board members. I will say that based on some comments in the local newspaper, I think it would be reasonable and appropriate to add language anytime we make a salary adjustment to an elected official, that we put language in that lets the reader know, if they read the agenda item, that it will have an impact on the Board of Supervisors salaries that are updated by ordinance in January of each year. So I do recommend that at this time. In terms of salary adjustments, I don't know if we want to take action on this and the salary adjustments, but in terms of the salary adjustments that we have, again, the 4.56, you have 4 courses of action. You can take no action at this time. You can defer the salary adjustment to a future date out in the future when times are better and we can look at what we can afford, whether it be the 4.56, 1%, 2%, whatever the case might be. You can decline the salary adjustment altogether, or we can consider other options. And that is my presentation.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Russo? Anybody like to have a question? Okay. I only have one written request to speak to this item. I will allow others, so if you will allow some public comment at this time. The one written request I have is from Catherine L. DeYoung. And again, the timer will be on for 3 minutes. So if Catherine DeYoung would like to step forward, and then if there's others after her, we'll have the same bottom right-hand side of the screen. You'll see a little 3-minute clock, and it'll buzz really rudely when your 3 minutes is up. If you would, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Catherine Kit DeYoung. I live at 14480 Avenue 256 in Visalia. Before I say what I was originally planning to say when I came up here, I want to say something else first. And I'm speaking primarily to you, Mr. Rousseau, but I hope the rest of you hear this. Mr. Rousseau, you implied that a union came into town, death threats were received, and that's expected to come with the territory. I'm a proud member of SEIU Local 521. I am not a violent person. I oppose violence in all forms. I've met many people who work for you who are also union members who I wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet without the union. I can't say that any of them have ever acted violent, angry. Yes, we're passionate. Yes, we are activists. Please do not call my union violent. Good afternoon, Chairman Cox and members of the board. My name is Kit DeYoung. I'm a licensed nurse. I'm a Tulare County employee, and I am a proud member of SEIU Local 521. We would like to present to you hundreds of signatures that we have collected from employees and residents of Tulare County, asking that all 5 board members decline to take 4.5% raise and one-time payment of $500 as you are scheduled to receive. Tulare County has just laid off 200 workers, and you say more layoffs are coming. This is not the time to take a raise. Local 521 members recognized this and offered to give back part of our raise if county would guarantee it would go toward retaining employees. We were told no. We are asking that you do the right thing and waive the raise and the $500 one-time payment you approved for yourselves back in September. You make a healthy salary and can afford to give this up. Many local 521 members earn very little, but were willing to sacrifice to help their fellow employees. You should do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last time I will allow clapping. So if there's someone else that would like to address the board, please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Yes, I am Janice Romero Nielsen, 707 East Vassar Avenue, Fresno. I am an organizer with SEIU 521. I also resent the fact that Jean Rousseau uses bullet casings, death threats, and SEIU in the same sentence. That's not what I'm here today for, though. I am here today to remind you that you are servants of the people, not the people of you. Not the other way around. There is nothing wrong with anyone, including officials, seeking financial independence. What is wrong is financial independence achieved on the backs of other people. Those people who entrusted you with the responsibility to represent and serve their needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Please feel free to use both microphones.
My name is Russell DeYoung. I live at 14480 Avenue 256, Visalia. How you guys doing today? I guess what you don't understand is when you're properly notifying the people, you're not really notifying them about what you're talking about. When you decided to close Hillman, you didn't say, we're going to talk about closing Hillman. We're going to talk about closing such and such an address. When you gave yourselves a raise, you didn't say, we're going to talk about giving yourselves a raise. We're going to talk about giving these employees in this section. You just need to clarify. I hope you guys understand it.
Thank you. I think that is the recommendation from our CAO as well. Yes, sir. Please step up to either mic and name and address for the record.
My name is Joe Savala, and I live at 1515 East Monte Vista Court, Visalia, California. I'm just an ordinary old man. I'm just going to say one thing. I think you gentlemen have joined the ranks of the rest of the United States. You're not here for the love of the job, but you're here for the love of the money.
Anybody else like to address this board? And you can feel free to line up if you don't want to have that long walk up here by yourself.
My name's Chris Unti. I live at 3002 West Taylor Court in Visalia. I just wanted to come to say that, we've all read a lot in the newspaper, heard a lot of different things. It's very difficult. Sometimes I read the Times Delta. I'm not always that impressed. I want to come to see and hear what you have to say for your actions. Mr. Rousseau, that was a beautiful presentation. I don't know really the point of it regarding salaries. Everybody in this county does plenty of work, a lot of hard work. There's a lot of people making $8 an hour, working 60 hours a week. And to say, well, these guys, look, they're on this board and that board, and oh, it's great. This is your job. This is what you came to do, public service. It's great that you're doing it. It's great that you get paid. I'm sorry if you're not paid as much as Fresno County. But you need to be a leader. That's why you're here, to lead our county. When we know the feds are broke, the state's broke, the economy's broke, Tulare County has one of the poorest counties per capita in the state. It's not right to take a raise. It's okay to, yeah, you deserve it. We all deserve it. We deserve a lot. Just don't do it. It's not right. It's not being a leader. You're the ones, like you said, the buck stops with you. It stops with all of you. Don't do it. It's show us that you're better than it. Yeah, there's the law, there's the regulations. You know, it's put in. Oh, we have that right. There's a lot of laws in the history of the United States that were changed, you know, because it wasn't right. You should be there to do what you think is right. When your county is suffering, suffer with them. Nobody's asking you to take a pay cut. Nobody's saying that you do a poor job. I mean, really, the amount of money for the 5 of you is $20,000. Is not very much. It's not going to affect anything. But it's the fact that you want, you know, that you feel entitled to it. And nobody here has said, we're sorry, maybe it was the wrong decision. All you said is, maybe I should have done it wrong. But hey, look at my charts. They're great. Look at this, you know. It's still, you just got to do what's right. Okay? You know, I know Mr. Enos and Mr. Vanderpool, in the newspaper it said that you've declined your raises. That's very good. That's great. I don't know if it'll actually happen, if you have the authority to decline your own raise or not. I'd like to see the other 3 of you step up as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Prokosky. I'm a member of the G-Law Board. I'm a public defender. I've been here for about 6 years. I don't care whether you take your raises or not. I think that is for your constituents to determine whether you deserve. And I'm not qualified to make the value judgment that is entailed in determining whether or not you deserve that raise. However, I would like to know what your raise has to do with my raise, and why in the world a raise predicated on the supplementation of the elected official's salary, which I understand was apparently perfectly legal, would be in any way analogized to raises which were in good faith negotiated, or in certain instances posed by you last year. These are not the elected officials upon whose salary your raise is predicated. This was the result of a bargaining process, a long, difficult bargaining process. We richly deserve the raises that we negotiated last year. In fact, I think we told you on many occasions that you'd have to pay us 20%, my unit, 20%, to queue us up to maintain being the lowest and lousiest paid group of 100 attorneys you can find in the Valley. I'm not giving that salary back. I'm not giving that raise back. The suggestion that I might makes me question whether or not you telling me no all year last year was even in good faith. It was the only raise we got last year. The raise that you are talking about today wasn't even the only raise you got last year, and the 7% you took last year is going to be compounded by the 4.5% that you're going to take maybe on March 1st. Take it or not, I don't care. But there's no analogy between the raise that you're talking about and the raise that we negotiated, or the raise that SEIU negotiated. And you haven't asked, but the answer is no.
Please don't clap. Thank you. I know I'm a fuddy-duddy. The microphone is open, ma'am. Anybody else like to address the board? I'm going to last call. I see someone moving.
Milt Smith, 3504 East Douglas Avenue, Visalia. I think this board will be remembered come election time. This is a corporation. You are members of that corporation. You guys are not supposed to be out there buying railroads or running back and forth to Washington, D.C., Sacramento. All the money you guys spent and the rest of the good old boys at TAG spent could have installed a new water system in Seville. I'm not in that area, but that could happen. But just remember, there's a lot of us out here, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Rebecca Coleman Thompson. I live at 245 North Korea Avenue in Exeter. I went out on strike last year to get my raise, 2.75. I cannot believe that Supervisor Ishida is telling me I have to give back my 2.75 for him to give his 4.5. I lost a day's work. You guys were not willing to give us anything, but the next week you got 4.5. And we won't forget when elections come back around, I promise.
My name is Shawn Graves. I live at 411 North Orange in Exeter, and I am a Tulare County employee. Much has been reported in the Times-Delta about the salaries, compensation, perks, and expense accounts of the members of the Board of Supervisors. And while it's tempting to comment on what seems to be exorbitant salaries of elected officials and members of management, while county employees are being laid off and other county employees are turning to healthy families and Medi-Cal to provide health care for their children, the point today is the transparency of government. That word is being thrown around a lot these days. The article in the Times-Delta on January 22nd quoted Supervisor Cox as saying, if any member of the public was interested in that item, they should have asked the board to pull that item so the board could discuss it separately. He also said, I knew that somehow my salary would be affected and that it would take effect sometime in the future. If the vice chairman of the board, someone who has been a supervisor since 2004, did not understand just how it would affect his salary, how could he possibly expect members of the general public to understand and question it? Especially when it was worded so vaguely and placed inconspicuously in the consent calendar. The Board of Supervisors has reviewed today the raises received by all county employees since January 1st. But it seems to me this is an attempt to focus the attention away from the issue of the process. The 2.75% raise that the majority of employees received was negotiated by the union, and then when those negotiations broke down, it was very publicly imposed on the union by this board. There's a huge difference in how those two items were worded and where they were placed on the agenda. Equally disturbing is the fact that no one seems to want to accept responsibility for the way this item was worded and placed in the agenda during two separate closed-door conferences. From the Times-Delta on February 5th. But in interviews this week, no one from the group, including then Supervisor Connie Conway, who was chairwoman, then Vice Chairman Phil Cox, and County Counsel Kathleen Bales-Lang, had any memory of any discussion about the raises. My suggestion would be that perhaps in the future those closed-door conferences should be documented, either by taking minutes or taping them, so that this kind of confusion does not occur. I have to disagree with the comments made by Mr. Worthley in the Times-Delta on January 2nd that this process is working and that it is transparent. It is not. My request here today is that the ordinance be changed so that it is truly transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board at this time? Going Gone? Okay. We will, at this time, bring this back to the board for some discussion. I don't know if some of the supervisors would like to make comments. Before I do that, I'm getting the wave from Mr. Russo here that he'd like to say something else. So, Mr. Russo.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify and apologize if I offended anyone about the death threat comment. I certainly didn't want to or mean to imply that SEIU was involved, because I don't know if they were involved. I just know that when I came to work, a particular morning around that time period, I found a bullet casing in front of my office door. So I apologize if the union members are offended. I never meant that. Second of all, in terms of the SEIU's offer to give up some of their salary increases, what I said was I could not guarantee that it would save jobs now, because we know future reductions are most likely down the road. And I reached out to that group to meet again and discuss ways that we can work collaboratively to deal with what we're going to be dealing with going forward. And the first meeting with SEIU in that regard is on February 26th of this month. And I strongly encourage SEIU folks and other county employees to participate. We're all in this together. We certainly don't have the answers in this office. We need all of your help. In terms of the pay raises with GLAW, what I meant was the unreps and the Board of Electeds get what the unreps get. My decision to give the unreps what was bargained. Typically, unreps get the lowest amount that's negotiated with the unions, and that's what they got this time too, the 2.75%. The other elected officials are part of the unrepped group. That's what I meant, wherever that gentleman's at. We also are meeting, in addition to meeting with SEIU, to talk about ways to address the potential future reductions. A part of the strategic plan for the county is a committee that we've started with Martin Meyer in my office, who's done a good job in that regard, as a budget sustainability committee. We're asking for all county employees who have ideas to save money in their departments to participate in this process. Again, we don't have all the answers here. We need as much help as we get, because the road that we're going down doesn't look pretty, and we all need to work together if possible. And in terms of responsibility for the agenda item, the responsibility falls on my shoulders, plain and simple. I take responsibility for it. Again, this was done in late September. Could we have done a better job wording it and avoiding the situation? Hindsight's 20/20, absolutely. Was anything done purposely by staff? I can guarantee you it wasn't. But I'm recommending that we change that going forward to improve the transparency in the process. And that's all I have to say at this time.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, when we considered the raise for all our employees, we were being told the state deficiency was $7 to $11 billion. If we had known it was $40 billion, there would not have been any raises for anyone. But that's hindsight. When we're being told now that the deficit's $40 billion, I'm not sure if that's a true figure. It could be far greater than that, because we have experienced that over the last several months, that this deficit keeps growing on a state level faster than we can catch up with the old number. I think that times ahead for not only government, you see the private sector downsizing. And with private sector downsizing, I don't see how government can survive without downsizing itself. So we're going to have some real bleak times for the next couple of years coming, and that means probably, I don't know, it depends on what the financial forecast, there may not be any pay raises for a couple of years. So I think we all realize that, and what Mr. Rousseau brought up, it's extremely important that that our employees and their representatives and the departments look at everywhere we could save money to where we can keep well, we can impact a little bit the future reductions in county staff. Now, I can't predict it's going to be 5 people or 500 people. We don't know. And hopefully, the state will catch up and do their job, and there won't be any of us having to discuss this matter. But I think we know better than that, the handwriting's on the wall, the financial outlook on the government side where we receive our funding is extremely dire. With that, that's all I need to say right now.
Anybody else like to address the public this time?
Mr. Chairman, I just, a couple comments. One of the comments was made, what's the point of all of this information that was presented by Mr. Rousseau? I want to say thank you, Gene, for doing that. I think partly it was to provide context because most of what I've seen published in the local papers have been not in that context, and so one might come up with the impression that the only people getting a pay raise in Tulare County was the Board of Supervisors, when in fact the entire everybody that working for the county got a pay raise. Also, I think it's really a pretty simple matter when you think about it. Gene said it in a lot of words, but really, you make the best decision you can with the information you have at hand. When he recommended that we could afford, and actually, we're talking about pay raise in terms of salary, but the total cost of the county, because there were also portions that went to health insurance, amounted to over 4%. It was over 4% that went to every employee for Tulare County. For those of us who don't receive the health insurance, we don't get that 1%, so that's not a part of our package, and there's other employees that's true for too. But the point was, at the time that he made that decision, looking at his budget, and we've been very conservative in Tulare County, so he felt that this was a sustainable pay raise. Giving people this 4% pay increase was something the county could do. You have to remember, the state had adopted a budget, we adopted a budget, we were looking forward in good faith that this is what we could afford to do. Now, Mr. Rousseau has shared with me later on that had he known what was going to happen to our local revenues and the state revenues, he probably wouldn't have suggested a 4% increase. It probably would have been a zero increase for all parties concerned. But that was the information he had at the time. Since then, the world has turned, and some might say upside down. That was not something we could predict or project going back when we were negotiating. If you understand about negotiations, you don't really have the ability to go backwards. Once you put a number out there to the unions and to the people you're negotiating with, you have to go forward, because if you go backwards, it's considered bad faith bargaining, and you can't escape that. So once we were kind of on that road, we really had no alternative but to go forward with that. So I don't hold the CAO responsible in a negative way for this. He did the best he could do with the information that he had, not being able to foresee the future, and as was pointed out by Mr. Ishida, the potential $7 to $11 billion becoming a $40 billion deficit at the state level, and the things they're talking about doing to us now are even scarier. But having said all that, as supervisors, we have an ordinance which I think has worked, and I agree with the recommendation from Mr. Rousseau that in the future it should be specifically highlighted in bold print that when there is a pay increase that affects the Board of Supervisors and the elected officials, it should be stated in the agenda so that there's not a question about it in the future. I believe the system is fair in tying the Board of Supervisors' salaries to the other elected officials. We are the elected officials of Tulare County. I think that's more fair than tying it, as other counties have, to the judges' salaries. The judges are state employees. They're totally different than the county system. Our county is our county. We're not tying it to other counties. We're not tying it to other elected officials in other counties. We're tying it to the people who are here. I think that's an appropriate thing that was done some 10 years ago or back in 1994. I think we should continue that. But in light of the world turning on its axis as it has, I would recommend to the board, and I would make this in the form of a motion, that we would defer any compensation increase. And I want to make the point, someone said that we got a pay increase. We have not received a pay increase. Our pay increase was not scheduled to go into effect until March, so we have not received any increase. And my motion would be that we would defer any future increase on this contract, of this agreed amount, until such time, if any, that we would bring it back before the Board of Supervisors on a duly noticed matter, not on the consent calendar, but as an untimed item, if in fact we were ever going to receive a raise. But at this point in time, it would be my motion that we would defer any increase in our compensation beyond what we already have today.
I second that motion.
Can I make a comment before we go to vote? I just want to make the point that I stand today where I stood, a couple of weeks ago when we first brought up this issue. Just to clarify for those of you who've made accusations regarding the entire board, I was not privileged to sit on this board prior to January of this year, so I was not a part of any decision made until this time. But I agree with the comments that were made that the decisions that were made based on the information at hand. That being said, I do not believe that I do not believe that we should be deferring. I think we should outright be declining this raise at this time. Well, let me finish, please. Just based on the fact that at a time right now, I mean, future increases, they will come up as they come. But right now, we're talking about a time where we have just laid off county employees. And when you lay off employees, I really have an ethical issue with accepting a pay increase at this time. So that is where I stand. And I don't know if we can have multiple motions on the floor at one time, but mine would be to rescind the raise.
We'll consider the first motion first. But before I call for the vote, real quick, I just want to say a couple quick things. Everyone loves a conspiracy. Some people think they've found a conspiracy. What a lie. There is no conspiracy here. There has been no attempt to hide, mislead, misguide, lie to, or do anything of the sort to the public. And I am offended by that. Someone has said, I'm not going to mention names here. Someone talked about I didn't know how granting those raises to the other electeds was going to affect my pay. I knew it was going to affect my pay. You know what? I'm not in it for the money. If I would have been in it for the money, I would have had it calculated out to the very penny how that was going to affect my raise. Supervisor Worthley here can tell you in December, before I took this seat, riding back with him from a conference in San Diego, I asked him, how much does a board member make anyways? I'd already gone through the election, won the election, and had agreed to take the position, not knowing what the position paid. We are not sitting up here for the money. I think you're sorely misguided if you think we're sitting up here for the money. I ran for this office not even knowing what it paid. I had conversation with Supervisor Ishida a week after that, and he was in the same position, didn't know how much the position paid. And I can assure you, most of us that came to this board took pay cuts from our jobs and our employment that we had before we came to this board. I can assure you that I took a cut in pay to come to be your representative as a board of supervisor and was making much more money than this 15 years ago as a contractor, so I'm offended by some of the allegations that we're in this for the money. I've had my 30 seconds of ranting and raving, and we have a motion by Supervisor Worthley and a second by Supervisor Ishida. Please cast your votes.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, before you cast your votes, we're going to let our attorney say something.
I just wanted to advise your board, under the ordinance, either deferring or declining, the action is essentially the same. You instruct the CAO to withdraw the publication of the notice. To defer, you would have to actively instruct him to republish under the ordinance. If you never did that, that in essence would be declining.
Well, and I would like to say something. I'm going to decline this raise. I said that before, and I'm standing by that. So either way, I'm not going to take it.
I think that's a vote we're just about ready to take. So go, members, go ahead and cast your vote. And it is 4-1. Supervisor Ennis voting no. Is that correct?
Let me clarify on that vote. Based on our county council's guidance, that vote is one and the same. To defer or decline is the same vote because that's what I voted for.
What you've done is essentially direct the CAO to pull back the publication.
Okay.
It now requires an affirmative vote from your board to put it to direct him to republish, which would be another 60-day period. And depending on when you did it, for example, if you did it next year and there were no raises this year, it would kind of be moot. If there's no further instruction, then nothing happens, basically.
So basically, for the raise to be reinstated or reissued, we have to take a separate vote to give that guidance to the CAO to go forward.
Correct, and it's my understanding from the board's comment that the board agrees with Mr. Rousseau's recommendation regarding I'd call it a practice change to word differently on the agenda if elected officials are given a raise, so that it will be very clear to any one member of the public that that would have an effect on board member salaries for the following calendar year. So
I just want to clarify that, you know, my vote is a yes vote, but it is a vote to decline the raise, and because it's considered one and the same.
well, if the matter was brought back before your board, you could have, of course, vote
differently.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay.
Then I changed my vote then to coincide with that.
Okay, so let it show that the voting is unanimous, 5-0. Thank you, and we hope this clarifies, and we look forward to a more clear public process in the future, and I assure you I'll use my calculator next time this comes up so that I can tell you exactly how the raise will affect my income. County Council, we do have reason for closed session.
we do, Mr. Chairman. Would you like me to go ahead
Please.
and announce now?
Go ahead and talk over everyone else. We'll go ahead and do it.
A little complicated. Items A through E are off your board's closed session agenda.
A through E.
Item K is a duplicate item. And item F needs to be corrected. That references a public item of the Board of Supervisors regarding the general plan, and that's inaccurate. It's only a closed session item for the board today. And I may have an announcement. It'll depend on your board's direction.
There may be an announcement from closed session. Okay, this board will adjourn to closed session. Thank you very much.
Ready? Announce closed session today, February 10th, by Kathleen Bales-Lang, County Council. In the matter of item N on the board's closed session agenda, SEIU Local 521 versus County of Tulare, the board authorized defense of the complaint filed by the Public Employee Relations Board. This is on motion of Supervisor Vanderpool, seconded by Supervisor Ennis. On a 4-0 vote, Supervisor Worthley being absent. There are no other announcements.